You may have noticed something of a tension in the public messaging in this crisis. If there isn't a fuel shortage, as we keep being told, why are there so many queues? And why are petrol stations running dry, albeit with hopeful reports today that the pressure might be easing? Here at Newsnight, with some help from the mathematician Rob Easterway, we will try to resolve that tension for you. It's worth going through some key numbers. First, there are around 39 million vehicles in the UK. Assume each has a fuel capacity of around 60 litres. Assume, for convenience's sake, that those tanks were all empty when this panic set in. Stay with us, it will all be worth it. If those vehicles' owners all try to fill up at the same time, that creates a sudden demand for around 2 billion litres of fuel. But the UK's 8,400 petrol stations only hold around 400 million litres, according to the Petrol Retailers Association. So only a fifth of that 2 billion litre demand.
That is exactly the same system that operates in every industrialised country around the globe, that the forecourts hold much less than the potential capacity of the vehicles on the road.
So that's why the surge in demand can't be met. Now, these are only rough numbers and rely on various assumptions which can be argued over, but they do give an indication of why the system is not coping. Here's the bottom line. There is enough fuel being produced in the UK's refineries to accommodate the UK's public's normal driving needs, but not to fill up every vehicle's fuel tank at once. So will the problem die down naturally, as some have argued? Well, again, let's consider this question using some broad brush assumptions. Assume every driver in the country manages to largely fill their tank. How long would that take? Well, we don't have hard figures on current outflows, but reports suggest petrol is leaving forecourts at several times the normal rate of 130 million litres a day. Assume conservatively that it's twice that rate at 260 million litres a day. That implies the 2 billion litre capacity could be filled in around 8 days. With the crisis having started 4 days ago, that's why many believe vehicles around the country could conceivably be full by the weekend.
Potentially, we could reach a point of some equilibrium between supply and demand towards this weekend, and we will be watching the figures very carefully as we go forward.
What happens when tanks are full? Well, some might try filling jerry cans from the pumps, but most wouldn't. Fuel, unlike, say, toilet roll, is pretty hard to store safely. Assume that the regular supply to forecourts carried on at the normal rate. People would then see petrol stations back in order with fuel available. They could then return to the normal patterns of fuel demand and the system could rebalance over the following weeks. So there could be a natural lifespan for this crisis, provided the supply of fuel to forecourts remains steady. And if people demand less petrol than otherwise, perhaps because their tanks are full and they drive less than normal, the system could even rebalance sooner. However, there's some bad news too. If there remain problems with deliveries to some filling stations because of the shortage of tanker drivers, that could create reports of pump closures, which could set off another round of queuing. People might well now be more alert to such supply hiccups, creating potential trigger points for a return to a cycle of panic.